Welcome to Wayward Writers. I'm senior literary agent and author Heather Cashman.
I'm author and writing coach Stephanie Bearce.
And I'm author and writing coach Nicki Jacobsmeyer.
Our mission is to nurture and enrich established writers throughout their publishing journeys.
We welcome all genres, age groups, and publishing paths through video podcasts, online webinars, in-person retreats, and more.
We're here to help you conquer your path.
Welcome, everybody. We're glad to have you today. We are going to talk with our amazing co-host, Stephanie Bearce, talking about her new release of The Secret of Moonrise, Manor, and what it's like to write a book series and get a multi-book deal. Nicki, will you tell us all about Stephanie?
Yes, I'll have to keep it short and sweet, but there's much to say. So Stephanie Bearce is the award-winning author of 35 books for children, probably 35 plus at this point. She loves digging through dirt for fossils, exploring haunted hotels and castles, and doing science experiments that explode. A former teacher with 25 years of experience in the classroom, Stephanie loves to visit school, libraries, literature festivals, and homeschool co-ops. Stephanie makes her home in the St. Louis area, but she grew up on a farm in Kansas where she learned how to ride horses, hunt arrowheads, and catch crawdads. When she is not writing, researching, or testing new crafts and experiments, Stephanie loves to travel. She does her globe trotting with her husband, Daryl, who is an actual rocket scientist. Yay, Stephanie, we're excited. We always have you on the show, but we're really excited to dive in deeper to you and your work. So can you share your writing journey with us?
Oh, okay. It's a checkered past, let me tell you. So when I was a kid, I really was one of those kids who wanted to be the writer for forever. And I actually went into journalism in college and I worked at our little local newspaper and did all that. And then I figured out that I wasn't really a journalist because I didn't like digging and writing bad things about people and stuff. So I didn't like that aspect of writing. So I spent a lot of years in the classroom and teaching kids and having a really good time with science. And then eventually I came back because I wanted to do some writing about my science and stuff for kids. And so I sold my first book on a 2-book deal also. But soon after I had those 2 published, my husband died of cancer. And so I was not able to write for a long time. So I really re-entered writing seriously probably about 2011 or so, when I really started doing contracts, lots of contracts and writing. And now I have the most wonderful agent, Heather Cashman, and I get to be on Wayward Writers with Nicki and Heather, and that's where I am.
That's awesome. I love how your story ebbs and flows, and there was challenges and obstacles, and there were seasons that you weren't writing. And even though that had to been extremely difficult for many reasons, you came back to it when it was the right season in your life. And I think sometimes as writers, we forget that there are seasons that we're still writers. We're just not necessarily doing pen to paper or on a computer.
And sometimes you're I think I was always writing, but I wasn't trying to publish anything at all. And I really firmly believe that people should, if you're a writer, you should just write for yourself. Mm-hmm. You need to just have stories and things that you're doing just for you. They'll never see the light of day, but it's something that helps you either mentally or just get emotions out, tell stories.
I agree with that process.
It is. It's a process.
Mm-hmm. So, having authored numerous nonfiction books, what motivated you to venture? Because when you first started being my client, I only represented your nonfiction. And then you brought everything over to me. You brought me your first middle grade novel, fiction novel. And what motivated you to move into the fiction space? And how was that experience writing fiction different than writing nonfiction?
I think I always wanted to write fiction. I just enjoyed, and it was very easy for me to write nonfiction because I really just love connecting kids with learning. And so that was just a really natural path for me as a teacher to write nonfiction and to want to write stories that kids would get interested in so that they'd actually learn about science and technology and history. But I've always played with fiction myself, just stories or different things like that. Then I don't know, I just wanted to try and see if I could actually write an entire fiction book. And I did, and it didn't sell, as you know.
It didn't
But
sell. I wish it would have, though.
I
We
know
got
it's a
so
great
close
book.
a couple of times.
but
We got so
but
close.
it is one of those lessons though for everybody that you do write, and I have some that are in drawers that should never be opened and never pulled out. So I mean, I do. They're really bad. So that's a part of it. No matter if you switch from fiction to nonfiction, I am sure you have to figure out all the ins and outs of every different type of writing. And it's fun though. It's exercising new muscles. Is I love trying new things, and so that it always makes me happy.
Yeah, I'm experiencing that right now with trying to go from writing uh, science fiction and fantasy to writing a nonfiction proposal about living life in an RV, and that my agent asked for, and is definitely stretching me. There is a big learning curve that is
There
associated
is, but isn't it's I don't know, don't you
with
find it
writing.
exciting though to try it and to
It
learn?
is. It definitely is. And the one thing too that I'm realizing is it has been a real joy to go back and reminisce and remember all the things that happened. And my
That's
husband and I
nice.
have been having all these conversations and laughing and also like not laughing about some of the things that we've gone through and that have happened to us. So yeah, I think that it's always good to test yourself, to try new
I
things, to
do
try
too.
different things.
I think it's
And
I know.
and I think it informs your other writing too.
I was going
You
to
know,
ask
you
you, don't you think you can apply, like, yeah, you might
Oh,
have never written nonfiction, but what you learned in fiction, you can apply and vice versa. And it
always.
makes you
absolutely.
better. It
Always.
really makes you
I
Yes.
better.
There is a point at which I think good writing is good writing. I mean, whether
Right.
it's
Yeah.
fiction or nonfiction or anything, and there are just some things that stand out about good writing that crosses all genres. But yeah, there's always some fun stuff to learn.
For sure. So, what entices you, Stephanie, to write mystery novels?
Oh, I am a mystery addict. I was Trixie Belden and
Yeah,
all the mystery books when I was a kid. I am a cozy mystery addict. We could go into all the mysteries series that I devour on a regular basis. So I love mysteries. My favorite part about a mystery, I think, is that for me, a good mystery, there's justice in the end. So there's been a
Yes.
wrong, but then the promise is at the end, it's going to be set right and there's going to at least be
hmm,
justice.
The definition of a cozy for sure
Hmm.
is
I love that satisfying ending. And I love trying to figure out the mystery.
who
My
done it?
husband and I mean, who did my husband and I have a contest. We always sit when we're watching mystery shows, try and figure
Hmm.
out who it was who can figure out who did it first. So
Yes, yes.
it's
How
great
does that
fun.
work out? Who's winning
Um,
in your house?
he's pretty good. He's
Is
pretty
he?
good. So
Yeah,
yeah,
that's
yeah.
fun.
so on February 4th, The Secret of Moonrise Manor, published with Shadow Mountain Press. Can you tell us a little bit about that book?
Oh, I love this book. I had so much fun
Me
writing it.
too. Me too. I
Um,
love it.
so my original thought was, I know when I pitched it to Heather, is what if and this was before Wednesday Addams, Tim Burton's Wednesday Addams, which I
Yes.
absolutely
Yes,
love. I
absolutely.
adore. But what if Wednesday Addams was a real person and she lived in a funeral home and wanted to solve mysteries?
What
And
a
so
great pitch.
that is that's
That's a
I
great
loved
pitch.
it.
It's
I was
brilliant.
like, yes, please.
that is who it is. So it's kind of a sort of a Wednesday Adams ish kind of girl. She's got a funky life living in a small tourist town, and she has her best friend believes in ghosts. She does not, because she's scientific and is always trying to prove that there are no ghosts. So they have quite a few arguments over that. But then there's a mummified body that falls out of a wall, and a mystery that involves her mother, because she thinks dead mother, her locket is on the mummified man. So they have to solve the mystery.
Mhm. so good. It's so good. And this is another reason to have critique partners because it is so fun to watch the manuscript. Your infancy, your first drafts are amazing, but like just when you think it can't get better, like it gets revised and then it goes to your agent and then you see it again and then you get to hold it feels like a win for everyone
Oh,
and
well,
that has
the
ever read it.
revision is
Yeah.
the revision really is the magic.
Yep.
I think because and if I didn't have great critique partners and wonderful agents and editors, all of that critiquing elevates anybody's manuscript and makes it so much better than you can do me just in my hole trying to write. I am so grateful, even when it's stuff that I don't want to hear.
Right.
You swallow it and you come back to it the next day. I'm like, oh, they're so right. I have to fix that, you know?
Well, and sometimes the fix isn't what they exactly said. I mean, that's the thing is sometimes you just know something's not working.
Mm-hmm.
And I think when you can think about it and take your time and then you come up with I mean, Stephanie, I know this is true of you because I've given you suggestions before and then you come back with things that are way more amazing than what I thought of and that fit better with the book because it's your book and your vision and
Yeah.
so we're just the motivators.
But it's your book and your baby and everything. But quite honestly, when you get a team of people that are helping you, as whether it's your critique partners or your agent or your editor, it really, to me, elevates the whole story and gives me ideas that I didn't have before.
Right.
And it just takes it to a whole nother level that it's difficult for me as an individual writer to reach on my own.
Yeah.
And so to
Yeah,
me, it's
like
just so
Yeah.
important.
pushes your potential that maybe you didn't even realize you had, right?
Yeah.
Like that's the
Mhm.
Yes.
magic of
Like, oh, I
the
know you
tool.
can do better than this. I'm like, no, I can't.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's
But you
always
do.
fun. It's always fun too when you have someone in your life that says that, but they're saying it out of love and because they
Yes.
know it's true and it's
It's out
great.
of
But
love and
so
truth.
this is great, and we are at a huge advantage because we have you, Stephanie, the author, and your agent, Heather, here. So, can you guys explain? So, you wrote this book, and when Heather went to sell it, did she pitch it as a two-book deal? How did all that come to be when you'd only written, not only, but you written this not middle grade novel?
I did pitch it as the ability to stand alone,
Okay.
but I pitched it with series potential
Okay.
because I knew of several middle grade editors and imprints that were looking for series
Okay.
at the time, especially with middle grade mystery. And so I pitched it that it could stand on its own, but it had series potential. We did get the offer originally only for the first book.
Mhm.
And I had been on the phone with one of them, and they had mentioned to me that they did have series interest. So then when I responded with my counter offer, I said to them, I know you have series interest. Would you be willing to make this a two-book deal? And they said, we would absolutely love to make this a two-book deal.
So, did Stephanie have to pitch some possible ideas for the sequel? Or
No,
no?
not now,
Okay.
not on this one.
That's great.
No.
So Stephanie,
But
that's
often
amazing.
you do.
Okay.
Often you do have to pitch the second synopsis and usually 3 chapters of is generally what they ask for. But yeah, no, they didn't have to do that. Stephanie didn't have to do that with this one.
So cool. So what were the differences, Stephanie, in writing the first? And
Sorry.
I know you've completed the second and it comes out in 2026, correct?
Um, yes. What was the difference? Okay, so I will have to say that I'm very used to writing series because I write a lot of series actually. Most of my books are in a series form, and so I'm used to writing the
Mhm.
first, the second, the third, the fourth a lot of times. But this was different because of course it's fiction. So a
And
lot of
longer form fiction.
yes.
Yep.
Yeah.
Just a
And
tad.
and so a lot of times when I'm doing series for nonfiction, it's not building upon one story is not building upon the other. their series and may be thematically the same, but they don't have a storyline that follows through. And so that's one of the big differences to me, is making sure that the continuity, making sure that the story is going to build, and making sure that I have a story arc that's going to go for that book, but then a story arc that will carry out through the series, so that there's a reason to have more than one book, so that you want to keep reading and find out what is the larger story arc and what's going to happen.
Very cool.
It is harder to write on a deadline.
Oh, yes. It's horrible to write on a deadline. I'm used to writing on deadlines. That's not the thing. Is the bad thing is if you're on a deadline and you get like something. I had a problem with part of this one where my editor, who is wonderful, she wanted me to change an aspect of it. And especially in a mystery, if you have to go
Mm.
back and change something that's a part of the plot,
Oh,
then it's this
geez.
massive cascade effect throughout the whole rest of the book. So you basically are starting over. And that's what happened to me on the second one. I like the direction my editor wanted me to go, because I think it makes it a stronger story. I wanted to do part of this. The second story I wanted a King Arthur tie-in,
Mm.
but it's set in Missouri, and it's about the Irish wilderness in Missouri. And so she was like, what could tie in better with that?
Mm-hmm.
And so I found a book of Irish fairy tales, and
So fun.
that tied in. So it's much better tie-in, but it hurt to read.
Oh, I can only
It
imagine.
hurt
It's like
bad.
take a deep breath, right? And you had to, even though it was fiction, you would have researched, right? It doesn't matter what you write, you need to research.
I don't know of anything that you're going to write that you're not going to research. I mean, even fantasy, you're going to have research into different worlds. And I don't know,
Mm-hmm.
maybe if you're writing super short, like flash fiction,
Okay,
200 word
that's
flash
fair.
fiction.
So when I did pitch this, I have to say, like, one of the advantages to being able to pitch it as a standalone is that you have the ability to sell the book on its own. But the way you set up this book, it was easy to have a takeoff, the second book, and also create that larger story arc over multiple books.
Mm-hmm.
So, can you tell us a little bit about how you set that up so that you would have that standalone feel and the satisfaction of the ending, but also this series potential?
That was kind of interesting. So when I originally wrote it, so here come all the spoilers for the story. So in the Secret of Moonrise Manor, Raven Gallows' mother died when she was 6 years old, and Raven is 12. And so suddenly she finds this locket of her mom in with a mummy, and what in the world is going on? And she eventually, they're starting to find out more about her mother. And so it involves a secret society and uncovering all of those things. And when I first wrote it, I had her mother alive at the end. And then when we were talking about pitching it, I thought it was probably better to have her mother dead at the end, because it would work as a standalone better. And interestingly, when Lisa, my editor, she came back and wanted to know, there's one thing we would really like to change. Could you have her mother be alive at the end so it could carry through? And I'm like, yes, I already have that ending. It was amazing. So
That's awesome.
I was like, yes, I can do that. Would you let me just pull out the other ending? It'll be fine.
Let me go to
But
my records.
but you have to have a satisfying ending, especially in middle grade. You want something that's going to be satisfying to the reader. And if you're going to have it be in a series, you still have to have that story that propels you on to reading the next one. In the next books, hopefully, she is still exploring where her mother is, what's going on, and can she bring her mother back from faking her death and having to go undercover. So
Well, and there are too some little threads in other areas too that are continued,
yes,
with like secondary characters
yes,
and things like that.
absolutely.
That you get that main satisfaction of the main character arc, the main story arc being finalized and come to conclusion. But then there are those other threads that
for me, that's the fun of writing fiction is I love all of the different subplots and threads that have to be put in place. And I think that's fun. I find it like a puzzle where you're going. So I'm not a pantser. I am not the person who's a discovery writer because I think I do all of my discovery writing way up front because I need to know what every character, what is their favorite thing? What do they want to do? What are their goals? So by the time I sit down and write, I know each one of those characters as I don't have to think about what they would be doing. I know what they would be doing. And so that helps me a lot in my writing. So maybe I'm a discovery writer. It's just that I don't sit down to write the book until I know all the things that I need to know. It's that research thing.
I mean, everyone has to discover what happens in their book. It's just a matter of when they discover it.
Yeah, that's probably true. I have to discover it up front or there's no book.
Right.
That's awesome that you know that, though, about yourself.
But there are some people who, if they write the outline, they feel like they've written the book, and so then they don't want to write the book.
Yeah.
And so you just have to know yourself, I think.
Yeah, you have to, because that would not be me. If I didn't have the outline, wouldn't know how to write the book.
Yeah, and it might be different for you with different audiences or fiction or nonfiction, right? Every book's its own animal.
It's true.
How you tame it is part of the discovery.
Is true. I think I guess I'm boring and I'm old and I know myself and I just have to have I like organization. It's part of the fun.
For sure.
I love the notebooks.
About puzzles, and your second book has puzzles in it.
Oh, correct? Yes, it does.
Okay, so that sounds so fun to read, but I'm wondering what it was like to write it and how you weaved it in. How did you stay organized? Tell us all the things, please.
I admire Jody Feldman so much. We've had her on.
Amazing.
She's amazing. And I've always wanted I want to put a puzzle in like Jody Feldman has in hers. Oh my word. That woman's amazing. It is so hard to fit all the puzzles in and to have the clues in the right places. So I don't know that I'll ever have a puzzle in a book again. I probably will, but maybe not as many as there are in the Curse of the Lost Cave has a quest that they're going on. And so the quest has been set up with puzzles that they have to solve.
How do you keep all that organized for your brain?
Notebooks. I am a note taker, a note keeper, and I have handwritten big boxes, even a big research box for novels. So
that's awesome.
How do you weave puzzles into a book? I mean, what even do you...
You have to have a reason.
What kind of puzzle is it?
You have to have a reason for the puzzles. You have to have a premise, first of all. Like Jody, when she's done the Golly Whopper games, there's a premise that they're going through and they're having to solve puzzles to get something. So, and in mine, they're on a quest that has been set up that they have to solve the puzzles in order to find the treasure. That's one of the big things is that you have to have a premise. If you've like the Parker Inheritance or any of the others, the Westing game, all those that have puzzles in them, there's got to be the premise of why in the world they have to solve the puzzle. Otherwise, it's very just gratuitous and is there. So I think you have to have a premise of why first. That's the most important. And then if you can convince your reader that it's critical that they solve the puzzles, then it could be fun. So, yeah. But I tried of course, I'm working with kids. So I'm trying also not to have something that's going to be too difficult for them, something that they could actually solve. So like I've used a pig pen cipher that they can actually solve and a book code that they can actually solve. I want it to be within the reader's ability to actually solve the mystery themselves too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Cool.
So how do you ensure that like all your mystery elements and or puzzles are middle grade? age appropriate? Is that another research thing?
For me, it's probably pretty intuitive because that's what I have taught and
Okay.
worked with for so long, so that I'm very, very used to fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh grade kids. And so I'm very well versed on what their reading ability is, what you're learning in math, what they're going to be able to do. But that's my background in education.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think for me, that's an easy part. I did the research for 25 years. So
That part's done for you.
that part's
Gotcha.
done. That part, for me, it's there. If you're
Okay.
not really familiar with all of those things, I think you would have to research and figure out what their capabilities are.
Makes
Yeah,
sense.
and what they're learning in each year, and
Yeah.
that stuff's all online.
It
Yeah.
is. It's
For
all
sure.
available. It's there. There's no deep dark secrets here.
Right.
It's all the curriculum and everything is available.
Right.
And I'm sure everybody has a kid down the street or in their church or their
Sure.
synagogue, and that is part of the research is
Mm-hmm.
meeting with the kids and enjoying it with them too.
Mm-hmm. So Raven's friends, who I absolutely adore, I don't know which one's my favorite either. I
I
I
know
love them
it's
all.
tough.
They each bring like these unique kind of talents and skills and personality to the table. So how did you develop each of these characters to make them unique? And then I'd also love to hear more about the intentionality with each part of that they play in Raven's kind of solving of the mystery.
Well, it kind of also is that whole Scooby-Doo gang, right? You need
Mm, yes, it is.
it is. That's the quintessential
It's
the
Wednesday Adams meets Scooby Doo.
yeah,
Love it.
Wednesday Adams. It's a little, oh, those darn kids. It's writing an ensemble because Raven's the main character, but she desperately needs her friends too. Like
Mm-hmm.
Raven is very logical, scientific, problem solving, and she needs her best friend, Cosmina Wild, because she needs someone who's on the wild side and to bring out that imagination and possibilities of what if that maybe Raven wouldn't look at. And so, one of the things that I did do because of teaching and being a counselor, I used the Enneagram to plot out my characters. So I
Oh,
can,
I love that podcast we did on Enneagrams.
yes, it's wonderful.
Yes.
Nikki Lenz, she and I talked about it. It is really, really helpful because the Enneagram not only gives you personality traits, it gives you faults that you have.
Mm-hmm.
So if you look at Raven, her fault, she has a hubris that she always knows the answer, and she doesn't. But that's part of she's going to have that fault, and sometimes somebody else is going to have the right answer. And then Eric Wong he's the adventure guy, the tech guy, but the adventure. You got to have somebody who's willing to jump on the bike or
Right.
swing on the rope or and
For
you need
sure.
that. And then Miles, he's the new kid, but if you're looking at the Enneagram, he's a loyalist. And that means he's the one that really glues them together. He may not be the one finding everything out, or he's not that adventurous, but he's the one that's always checking in with his friends, making sure they're okay. And he's the loyalist, and he will be there for you no matter what. And you need that friend too. So I really did look intentionally at each personality type, and that when you have a group and you do want to problem solve, you need certain personality types to work together. So I tried to give each one of them a distinctive Enneagram personality type with their faults that actually go with that. So it may
So,
be formulaic, but it works for me because then you know exactly how they're going to react to something because it's their personality. And
Mm-hmm.
well, and they're like real people. They're authentic.
yeah, I
And
hope
when
so.
you're reading it, you either identify with one of them, or you're like,
Right.
oh,
Yes.
my Miles in my life is this,
Yes.
and
Mm-hmm.
that makes it all come off the
Yeah,
page. And so, what
absolutely.
was your most fun part of writing
Oh,
Moonrise Manor,
I don't
and your
know.
second one?
I've just really had fun with the characters and just imagining the world. I think that's one of the things I love. I built Sassafras Springs as a take off of Eureka Springs, Arkansas, which I adore. That's the
Me
cutest
too.
little town in the world.
It's amazing.
I would live there. But I wanted something that the town had a personality too. And it's quirky and weird. And the Moonrise Manor is a takeoff on the Crescent Hotel, which is considered the most haunted hotel in America. So I like all of those things. But then I also love the part that it's in the Ozarks. And so, like, for the second book, I was able to delve into real history. I like to tie in real history. In the first book, I was able to tie in the Gardner Museum heist in Boston. And in the second one, I have tied in The Secret of the Irish Wilderness, which is a settlement that disappeared during the Civil War in the Ozarks area. I definitely fictionalize what happens, but if kids want to look, they can actually look up the Gardner art heist and they
That's
can
awesome.
look up the Irish wilderness and find out about those things. So,
Well, and it's great points for teachers and librarians
yeah.
and all that
It's
good
just
stuff.
it's just fun. I don't know, when I read my cozy mysteries,
Yeah.
I want to go to all those places
Yes.
where they're
Travel the
set.
world.
Yes,
Absolutely.
from my armchair. So,
Love
I
it.
guess I want kids to be able to do the same thing.
So you may have answered this, but I know you struggled with the puzzles. But was there anything that sticks out to you as the most challenging part of these books?
The deadline on the second one. It's
Yeah,
just um
it's
Can
hard
I
to write on a
can
deadline.
you
it's
share
hard.
with
I
us
write on
what
deadline, but this was different because I think being creative on a deadline is different than when I do nonfiction. When I'm doing nonfiction,
Yeah,
like I said, I'm creating the structure of the book and the theme of it and everything. And that's done really on the front end of it and then putting all the research. And so it's just a chunk, 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 fill it in. But even though I'm a serious outliner, you have to be creative. And so being creative on demand, I think, is the hardest thing. And that's why I'm really glad that my editor and my agent are going to come bring it back to me. I've turned it in and they're going to bring it back to me and go, Stephanie, you can improve this. And I'm like, yes, I can, with
can
some
you
help.
share how long or how short of a time you were given to write it
I really
approximately?
probably wrote it in about 6 months.
Oh,
So,
wow. That's
and
good
wrote
for
it almost
good for you.
twice.
yeah. So about 6 months. I actually think that if I would get the chance to do another one, it would be easier a third time
Okay.
because um, I don't know, I'm just so immersed now in the world. Now, if there was a big gap in between, it would be really hard. But right now I'm so immersed in the world that you don't ever want to pull out of it. For me, it's very
Sure.
hard to like pull out of a project and then put myself back into it. Um,
Mm-hmm.
so, but that's me. Some people are able to do that. Some people are able to juggle multiple projects at a time. And I do, but it's easier to stay in a story and not lose the thread of it for me.
Yeah.
Varies for different authors.
Okay, Stephanie, last question. Are there any craft books or classes you would recommend for others that are wanting to write mysteries?
Oh, yes. The first thing I would highly recommend is joining Sisters in Crime. That is a phenomenal research, whether you want to write adult, kid, any kind of mystery thrillers. I wish I would have known about them
Hmm.
even longer ago. I've only been in like a couple of years now, but they have incredible resources. It's a super affordable. I think it's like $40 or $45 a year, and you have access to all of their recorded classes that you can go in at any time and just listen to them. And then they have so many different classes that you can take that are either low cost or even some of them that are free. They have write-ins, and we've had Simon Wood on.
Yes.
Just had him here, and he's
Mm-hmm.
one of the teachers there. So that's to me is just an incredible resource if you want to write anything in the mystery genre. That's where I go, and then of course just story structure stuff. I really love Jessica Brody's Save the Cat Writes a Novel. I love that one. And then 3-act structure kind of things.
Mhm.
And read lots of mysteries. If you love mysteries and you want to write a mystery, then the best way to know about a mystery is to be really familiar with the mystery genre. Read it.
Yeah.
That reminds me what Lisa Q. Matthews said, because she's a mystery writer as
Yes.
well. And she said that after editing it for so long, the structure was just baked into her mind. And now she doesn't even use an outline. She just writes her books
Wow.
without an outline. That really fascinated me. But that's true. If you read enough of them, it does become intuitive,
Yeah.
and your brain just puts it together. And
I think there's a rhythm to it. I think it's the same with just like a romance. There's a rhythm and a pattern
Yeah.
to them that you become really familiar with the beats that you need to have and where you need to hit them, and you feel it. It becomes instinctive. Writing it just as well as it is when you're expecting it in the book.
That's great. Well,
Stephanie, it was very fun to have you as a guest today.
yes,
Well,
it
was fun
was.
to be a guest. So thank
And
you
we're
for
very,
having
very
me.
excited that your Secrets of Moonrise Manor published. And
Yes, I'm very excited.
it's exciting.
I will be out visiting schools and all over. So tell everyone to have me come visit, and I'll tell you about Moonrise Manor. Every child
Perfect. And then
should
we have
have
to
a
wait.
Wednesday Addams moment,
Yeah.
right?
And we'll get the sequel next year. So
Yes.
very excited. Well, thank you so much for sitting on the other side of the microphone with us today.
Thank you for joining us on this episode of Wayward Writers.
Let's connect. Find us at waywardwriters.com, X, Instagram, YouTube, and Facebook.
See you next time. Conquer your path.